What does a ruler do when the world's greatest empire presses at her borders, and survival depends not on armies, but on the power to sway the mightiest men of an age? In the hush before dawn along the Nile, when the desert winds softened and the river reflected the faintest suggestion of daybreak, Cleopatra VII stepped into history with a determination shaped as much by fear as by ambition. For those who recall moments when a single decision seemed capable of tilting the future, her story carries a quiet gravity. The tale of a young queen navigating forces so vast that even her brilliance could only bend them, not break them. She was born in 69 BCE into a dynasty already fraying at the edges. The Ptolemies, Macedonian Greeks who had ruled Egypt since Alexander the Great's era, governed a land rich in culture, yet strained by internal rivalry and foreign influence. Her birthplace, Alexandria, stood as one of the ancient world's great urban centers, its marble colonnades towering above bustling markets, its lighthouse guiding ships from distant horizons, and its famed library symbolizing centuries of accumulated knowledge. Yet beneath this splendor was a current of instability. Her father, Ptolemy XII, ruled uneasily, relying heavily on Roman support to maintain his throne. When he died in 51 BCE, Cleopatra ascended as co-ruler with her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII. She was about 18, educated, multilingual, and reportedly sharp-minded, but the court's advisors favored her brother, whose youth made him pliable. Cleopatra appears to have tried asserting authority independently, as suggested by surviving documents that list her name without his. It was a bold move in a kingdom governed by tradition, and it provoked the court factions aligned against her. Within a few years, she was forced into exile, driven from Alexandria and stripped of the power she believed she could wield. At the same time, Rome, restless, ambitious, and divided, was reshaping the Mediterranean world. Julius Caesar pursued his rival Pompey across the region in a civil war that had shaken the foundations of the Roman Republic. Pompey, seeking refuge and perhaps Egyptian support, fled to Alexandria, only to be assassinated upon arrival by those hoping to win Caesar's favor. When Caesar reached the city in 48 BCE, he entered a political landscape tangled with betrayal, uncertainty, and a dynastic quarrel that threatened the stability Rome valued in its strategically crucial ally. Cleopatra recognized that Caesar's presence offered both opportunity and danger. What she wanted was nothing less than the restoration of her throne, and with it, the autonomy of Egypt. But she knew such ambitions were impossible without Rome's acknowledgement. Yet Caesar was heavily guarded, and Cleopatra was barred from the palace by her brother's supporters. Ancient accounts describe how she circumvented these obstacles. The famous story that she was smuggled inside a carpet or bedding sack may contain dramatization, but many historians believe she did engineer a clandestine arrival. Whatever the exact method, her appearance before Caesar transformed her fortunes. Contemporary observers note her intelligence, confidence, and command of languages, qualities that distinguished her among Hellenistic rulers. Her meeting with Caesar was not merely a personal gambit, it was a calculated maneuver by a sovereign fighting for survival. Caesar, intrigued or impressed, decided to support her claim to the throne. His intervention deepened the conflict between Cleopatra and Ptolemy XIII, culminating in the siege of Alexandria. Battles raged through the city's streets and harbor. Fires damaged portions of the library, according to some accounts, and the social order wavered as Roman and Egyptian forces clashed. The struggle ended with Ptolemy XIII fleeing and drowning in the Nile. Cleopatra was confirmed as queen, now ruling with another younger brother, Ptolemy XIV, although evidence suggests she held the true authority. Her partnership with Caesar secured her position, but it also entwined Egypt's fate with a Roman leader whose own future was uncertain. Over the following months, Cleopatra and Caesar's political relationship deepened. Later writers portray elements of romance, though the precise nature and balance of their personal and strategic motives remain debated. What is clear is that their alliance had significant consequences. In 47 BCE, Cleopatra bore a son, Caesarion. Some historians believe she hoped Caesar might recognize him formally, a step that would have elevated both her and her dynasty's standing. Caesar never made such an announcement, but he welcomed Cleopatra in Rome, where she stayed for a time. Her presence fascinated Roman society, while also stirring controversy among those wary of foreign influence. The turning point came abruptly. In 44 BCE, Caesar was assassinated, plunging Rome again into upheaval. Cleopatra, who had returned to Egypt, suddenly faced the loss of her most powerful ally. Without Caesar's protection, her political footing became precarious. Rome fractured once more, and Egypt's survival depended on navigating yet another shifting landscape of power. Two of Caesar's successors emerged as dominant figures: Octavian, his adopted son, and Mark Antony, a seasoned general who controlled Rome's eastern provinces. Antony summoned Cleopatra to Tarsus in 41 BCE, reportedly seeking financial support for his campaigns and evaluating her loyalty. Accounts of their meeting vary widely. Some writers describe Cleopatra arriving on a lavish barge adorned with gold and scented with exotic perfumes, imagery likely shaped by Roman dramatization, while others emphasize her poise and command. Regardless of the theatrics, she met Antony as a sovereign mindful of her precarious position. Their relationship evolved into both political alliance and personal partnership. Antony needed resources for his military ambitions, especially his planned campaign against Parthia, and Cleopatra needed a Roman ally strong enough to safeguard Egypt's autonomy. Their connection produced children, strengthened ties between Egypt and Antony's faction, and further complicated the already tense rivalry with Octavian. Over time, Octavian used this alliance to craft a narrative portraying Antony as compromised by Cleopatra. Surviving Roman sources suggest he worked deliberately to paint her as a manipulative foreign queen, an image that aligned with Roman fears of external influence. Whether Antony was truly swayed to the extent Octavian claimed is uncertain, but the propaganda proved effective. Octavian turned the public and Senate against Antony, framing conflict with Cleopatra as a defense of Rome itself. The decisive confrontation came in 31 BCE at the Battle of Actium. Antony and Cleopatra commanded a large but troubled fleet. Desertions had weakened their forces, and internal divisions strained their cohesion. Cleopatra's ships, some sources say, were among the strongest, but as the battle progressed, the tide turned in Octavian's favor. When Cleopatra's vessel retreated, Antony followed, an act that has been interpreted variously as strategic withdrawal, miscommunication, or emotional impulse. The true reasoning remains unclear, but the consequences were devastating. Their fleet collapsed, and their hope of resisting Octavian vanished. Octavian advanced toward Egypt. Antony, isolated and distraught, took his own life. Cleopatra, facing the full weight of Rome and stripped of every political safeguard, confronted the final decision of her reign. She reportedly attempted negotiations, perhaps hoping to preserve Egypt or secure a future for her children, but Octavian planned to bring her to Rome as a captive. To Cleopatra, a ruler who had fought all her life to maintain dignity and sovereignty, the prospect of humiliation was unbearable. Ancient accounts state she chose death, possibly through the bite of an asp, though some historians argue the exact method is uncertain. Her death in 30 BCE ended the Ptolemaic dynasty and marked Egypt's absorption into the Roman Empire. Caesarion, her son with Caesar, was executed shortly afterward on Octavian's orders, eliminating any remaining threat to his consolidation of power. Octavian soon became Augustus, Rome's first emperor, inaugurating a new political order. Cleopatra's legacy has long been shaped by those who wrote about her, many of them Roman, many influenced by political motives or cultural biases. Yet beneath those layers, a more grounded portrait emerges, a ruler born into a perilous age, navigating the ambitions of an empire that dwarfed her own. Her use of charm, intelligence, and personal alliance was not merely seduction in the romanticized sense, but a survival strategy in a world where Egypt's independence hung by a thread. The impact of her life extends far beyond her dramatic end. With Egypt's annexation, Rome gained immense wealth, agricultural stability, and strategic depth. The shifts that followed influenced the formation of the empire that would dominate the Mediterranean for centuries. Cleopatra stands at the crossroads of that transformation, a leader striving to preserve her kingdom as the world around her changed irrevocably. Her story endures not because of the embellishments added over time, but because of the unmistakable truth beneath them. In an age of empires, she fought to shape her destiny with every tool available, walking a line between strategy and survival as the currents of history closed in.